I saw the season at City Center, and what I've been impressed with the last, not just last season, but the last couple of years, because we've been kind of doing this now for the last 3 years or so, is the steady progression toward a new Graham aesthetic.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. I mean, even you can tell that it's gaining momentum just by the fact that we are now able to play City Center again. Come back to the Joyce. 2016 we'll be back at City Center. And that success allows us to do sort of the more opera house premieres and Graham works in the larger space at City Center, and allows us to do more experimental, rangy work in the smaller house of the Joyce. Both spaces suit the Graham Company beautifully, but both can serve different purposes for us, and allow us to be more diverse and start experimenting with demonstrating how expansive Martha Graham's legacy is.
You know, what I was really impressed with was the 2 works that you premiered last season.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that each one took a different direction in really continuing the Graham legacy, but not getting stuck in a Graham mold.
Mm-hmm. I think, you know, when you think about Martha's compared with Picasso and Stravinsky, because she made such a seismic shift. Her discoveries were so radical and changing. And you think of all of the art that Stravinsky has inspired and that Picasso has inspired, just generations of new creative efforts that are sprung out of the wellspring of these artists. And the same thing is true of Martha. It's just we've never focused on it before, and we've never invested in it before. So now we're able to commission these works that are not necessarily immediate, you know, the next generation Graham. We in fact look for choreographers who might have a completely different vocabulary, but somehow connect back to Graham's radical discoveries of the 20th century. And there's a lot of really organic connections that we can make to brand new art that on the first look might not seem that it's connected to Martha, but there's a deep connection.
What I was impressed with is the way that, how well it looked on the dancers. They were able to take that wonderful technique and that style and then take it someplace altogether different. And just it was so different to see the work based on Narcissus, and to see that the choreographer used basically circular patterns and swirls, and it was almost hypnotic in the way he did it, and it was beautiful storytelling. And then to go to Nachadwadi, where we were in a kind of like nightmarish altered realm.
Yeah, you know, another thing we discovered as we try to expand on the legacy is what a great foundational technique the Graham technique is. Our dancers are so strong and so powerful that the choreographers who have been coming in have been quite astonished at how quickly they can take on new physical vocabularies. They had, I would say, more trouble with the Phoniodakis work because it is so frenetic and so loose-limbed, sort of letting go of what happens to the arms and legs. And yet I don't feel that Phoniodakis' vocabulary would exist unless Graham had initially said, let's use the torso as a motor. Let's use those core muscles to generate movement. Because you really can't move as quickly as Phoniodakis wants you to move without first generating it in the back and in the center.
Right. And that's what I saw. That was, I thought the choices were excellent because there was such a diversity. You had someone who was taking us into, like I said, a nightmarish realm, but the movement itself was much more staccato and much more, there was a very eerie imagery. And then you went to Adakis' work where, on the other hand, then it was about, again, a Greek myth, which was kind of kept in the same kind of Graham tradition, but again, taking Narcissus in the way that he played the even echo against that, and just the way that the whole pictures were done.
Right.
It was a whole different type of setting imagery.
Right.
And I thought that was, it showed the range of the company. And then, of course, you know, I love Rite of Spring. I thought that was so well done. It was a great revival for the season.
We're really proud of the Rite of Spring, that revival of the Rite of Spring, because it's Martha's choreography, but the original sets and costumes were damaged in Hurricane Sandy. And we took the opportunity to recreate the production in a way that we could travel with it much more easily and take this remarkable choreography to many more audiences. So we're always looking creatively at what we're going to present. The Rite of Spring was a great match with that Nacho Duato work that was so insect-like, animalistic, you know, had its own ritual qualities, alongside Martha Graham's Rite that contains all of those things also.
And now this season you're doing 4 of the Lamentation series, and I was the range of the choreographers and the diversity again is so challenging.
Well, now we're getting kind of bold, you know, because this approach is gaining momentum and having success, and audiences are more and more returning to Graham. So we decided to really use the Lamentation variations in 2015, which is the 85th anniversary of Lamentation, to demonstrate how rangy we can be and how far afield the Graham legacy can be spread, it can inspire. So we specifically chose a diverse group of choreographers. We wanted to demonstrate how rangy we can be, but we also wanted to reach out to audiences that may have the wrong impression of Graham, that may think that we're sort of in a historic box of some kind. We're particularly pleased, well, we're pleased with all of them. I mean, Liz Garing is coming out of the Merce Cunningham family tree, very intellectual, abstract. Kyle Abraham, African-American, borrows from hip-hop, borrows from Graham, a really eclectic mix. Michelle Dorrance, who's at the top of the tap world right now.
Say, what did I know?
Yes.
The whole diversity.
She didn't do a tap dance for our dancers, but you can clearly see her signature work with rhythm and syncopation. And finally, Sonia Tea from So You Think You Can Dance fame, bringing in her spectacular choreographic talent into the Graham world. She's a very emotional choreographer, almost fits the Graham world more precisely than those other 3 choreographers do. And yet, I think she's the most shocking for some people, that we would reach out to the television audience.
But you know, when you did that, but I'm always, my gripe with something like You Can Dance is that it's always a soundbite. It's never a complete work. So in order to get, I think it was so fitting to give someone who gives you 2.5 minutes of bam, an opportunity to do something a little longer and a little more.
Well, we've doubled her time.
Yes.
It's not a 20-minute piece. You
No.
know, the Lamentation variations are short works.
Right.
They're required to keep them at about a 4-minute, because that's how long Lamentation is. But Sonia is wonderful to work with. Really connected with our dancers, and we are hoping that her much broader audience will see in us what we see in Sonia, that that great dance is great dance, and if it comes from the heart and if it's physically propelled and emotionally propelled, you know, her audience will realize, oh, Martha Graham, that's not so historic. I see that in my favorite television shows.
You know, when you think about Graham, what she was doing at the time was groundbreaking. She was doing dance in places that it hadn't been done, in ways it hadn't been done, and so the idea of reaching into the media, the audience of the 21st century.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, she was involved in some big media projects, and I don't know if you remember that there was a radio contest called Miss Hush, where the radio commentator would give a few clues to the, you know, the secret person's identity each week, and that person would speak. Martha would, you know, give out the clues, I think, and it went on for 7 weeks or so before someone finally identified Miss Hush as Martha Graham. It was in Life magazine, it was in the press, you know, it was, it caused a lot of attention.
But I was even thinking of her film, how she talked to the audience and went against the model of being, you know, a performer, and it was almost like I'm here, but it's always Martha Graham.
Right.
But she was coming to the audience in almost teacher instructor way, kind of like, here I am, this is how you apply your makeup, this is how
Right.
you prepare to go on stage. Now we're going to show you a class, now we're in a dance field. Just one, you know, so she's...
That's the A Dancer's World
Yes.
film, and she really was inviting the audience into a dancer's world, you know, from the makeup and the hair and the costume and the preparation and the technique. And I'm sure at the time she was reaching out to audiences who didn't know much about her work, like we are today with
Right.
our lamentation variations. We can take so much example from Martha. You know, she experimented in so many different ways, including, for example, that she was trying to make what she called dance dramas, making a combination of theater and dance. This brings me to one of our premieres this season. Annie B. Parson has put one of her works on us, which is a combination of theater and dance. Again, people may be surprised that Annie B. is doing a work for the Graham Company. But I see this very close connection to experimentation that Graham did in the 40s to Annie B.'s contemporary version of the deconstruction of theater techniques and dance techniques being brought together to create a statement.
One of the more unfortunate things that happens is when an artistic director, choreographer, founder dies, the company isn't able to sustain itself. I mean, it's not able to find the new voice. And Graham is one of the fortunate companies, I think, and I think that has a lot to do with the way you are planting this vision for the future.
You know, when I first came in as artistic director, I realized that audiences had changed since Martha's death, funding had changed, presenters had changed, and we really need to figure out who our audience was and what would bring them into the theater. And I realized it wasn't just a problem for the Martha Graham Dance Company, it was a problem for modern dance in general, that we were now about 100 years old, that we were an art form that was based on revolt, that it was all about throwing out the old and creating the new. And audiences only wanted the new, and the field itself was only perpetuating the new. And it was time, as an art form, to say, well, wait a minute, we're 100 years old now. We, for the first time ever, have classics. We have masterpieces in our past, and we need to figure out how to make them relevant and how to attract audiences to them and how to honor them ourselves as an art form. So I really looked at other art forms who had crossed this bridge before. You know, what are the greats of American jazz doing? What are museums doing with the Picassos? You know, what's opera doing? And began looking and asking, what's the modern dance equivalent of a museum's audio tour,
Right.
of opera super titles? How do you give audiences more points of access to your core collection? And really that idea is what has led to all of the experimentation that we've done. How do you take those core masterpieces and find new pathways in and out of them? You know, what can they inspire? What can you program them with that may put them in a different context? And it's really, it's worked. You know, not all of them have worked perfectly, but as an approach, it's really giving us a lot of momentum. And I think we see, I know we see other companies taking these techniques now. New York City Ballet has done some spoken introductions. Robert Battle is doing spoken introductions to his. This is something that we started in 2005. And the overarching theme for our season, or for each program, City Ballet has been doing this for the last few years, and we see more and more of this coming into the work of other companies and artists.
You know, I'm looking forward to the season. And I want to thank you again for taking, as I tell all the artists, for taking the time out so close to the Susan, to come and just share this with us.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. You're so well informed and you are such a great supporter of the art form that it's a pleasure.
Thank you.